guys, welcome to Limits Podcast. We are back with another episode. We are all about discussing education and its intersection with society, and you're here joining us on our first Tea Talks episode.
I mean, you know, obviously, like if you're not a fan of tea, like just imagine coffee, but it still resonates, you know.
All water.
And our Tea Talks is essentially about conversations which is more introspective, and it's just to know a little bit more about us, what we're about, what we do, what we like, etc. And you are joining us on our first conversation, which is about roots and upbringing. But first, before we get into it, why did we come up with the name Tea Talks? Where did Tea Talks come from? Anyone?
Well, as you know, it's limits, let's meet in the staff room. And when you're in the staff room, not even as teachers, to be honest, anyone that goes to the staff room, you want to take a bit of a break and, relax with a cup of tea. So,
yeah,
cup of tea, tea talks, you have a relaxing conversation rather than, talking about work. It's where you escape, get away. So, yeah.
Love it.
I think I'll just even add to that. It's like when I think about like if you're having a quick cuppa, like as English people would say, there's who aren't from England. But when you have like a quick cuppa, the idea is just that it's just something just to kind of rejuvenate you. It's something to kind of like get you kind of a bit focused again, especially if your mind's been distracted and stuff like that. So if you're in the staff room and you're having a quick chat, you're catching up with somebody who works in another department.
Yeah.
It's somebody who you probably won't see until the weekend or so on and so forth. So that's the whole idea behind the Tea Talks.
Fabulous. So I'm going to throw a few questions at you guys, and we are just going to have a conversation. So it's going to be very chilled, so relax, Okay, so the first question I've got for you guys in relation to roots and upbringing is, and this question is for Zion.
I knew it.
Zion, because I feel like you might have had the most interesting upbringing. What was your upbringing?
What was my upbringing? How much do we want to? How much should I know? In
So
regards to
tell
education.
No, just in general.
Just general.
This is about you.
Boy, cool. Yeah, obviously, Zion. If I go straight to the beginning, I was born in Sierra Leone, actually, so not British born. Interestingly, I actually grew up in the midst of a civil war in Sierra Leone. But it's weird because I don't remember. I don't remember anything from childhood. Literally, when I cast back my mind, I can only remember from like when was it? Yeah, like it's so difficult to pick a kind of first memory, which is weird. So I grew up in Sierra Leone. I moved here when I was 4, going on to 5th of September 1998 is when I came here.
Man, even the day and the month.
And it was actually weird. I found this out a while ago. My mum was telling me a few weeks ago how when I came here, I was actually traumatized because of a war. So when I would hear police sirens and ambulances and helicopters, I would hide, saying they're coming to get us.
Oh, wow.
Kind of thing. So it's like I'm piecing together a lot of my kind of childhood. But yeah, I think I grew up with my mother, brothers, obviously single, not obviously, but fortunately, single parent home. So yeah, I'm the eldest. Grew up with them. Have 2 younger sisters, a younger brother. Grew up in Peckham. So shout out, grew up in Peckham. In the heights, you could say, of a lot of a kind of criminal gang activity. Moved to Dagenham. So again, in the heights of that time of discrimination, racism, disparity. So it was always interesting. I always said, like, it's such interesting where the context where I grew up in kinds of civil war, disparity, conflict, disadvantage is what's made me who I am today. So I always find it so interesting that I feel my life has shown me my future.
My God.
Dropping those gems.
Dropping knowledge. Grew up in Dag after. Yeah, we'll go into a lot more, but I think I'll stop there for now, and we'll go into a lot more as we move on.
Wow, Civil War. Never know. Did you guys know
I
that?
had no
Civil
idea. In my head, I'm thinking, my goodness.
That's what you read in books,
Crazy.
So it used to get me so mad when kids will say blood diamonds. Because also I don't know if you guys know much about the history of war, but it was between the rebels of the state, and what they would do is ask you, do you want short sleeve or long sleeve? And what they meant was, so if you said short sleeve, they'll cut your
My
there, or
God.
long sleeve or kind of, so it was horrendous, you know.
Wow.
So I remember coming in England and everyone made joke about, you know, blood diamonds, etc. And I'll just sit there like, yeah,
It's
really
actually-
kind of,
yeah, it's not a joke.
yeah.
Wow. So would you teach your children about the history of war and, you know, in Sierra Leone and what happened? Do you feel like that's something you want them to know about specifically because you grew up in that era?
Yeah, I think I'm going to paraphrase, but I think there's a beautiful quote that says you need to know your history to know your future. And as I think, as I've just said, I think looking back in retrospect at my past, what I've been through, it's really informed my decisions now and that which I do going forward. So I think it's always perennial for you to understand the context and who you are within that context where you've come from. Interestingly enough, again, I found out my surname, Sengulay, my original surname, was actually a name given to the ruling tribe within Sierra Leone. So people who had my surname were those who were in government, ministers, teachers,
Wow.
academics,
Look at
etc.
that.
So my father was a lecturer in university. So I remember saying to my mum one day, I want to go back to Sierra Leone research. She was like, no, you can't go, because if people know your surname, they know where you come from,
Wow.
kind of thing. And I actually met an uncle who I've never met before. And he came and he was saying, you know, without anyone telling him, he heard our surname and he was saying to my mum, wow, like, do they know where their lineage is?
Wow.
Kind of thing. So I'm now on a journey of discovery about who I am in regards to my country. Because I think I've missed that growing up. So as I'm learning, I'm finding out the importance of that, and it gives me it's points of reference for who I am today, and it can help, again, inform who I will be going forward.
Yeah.
So I think it's
Wow.
definitely something I'll teach them.
Some powerful stuff, and we just haven't even started.
As in,
Wow.
with a bang, my God.
Right, I'm coming to you next, Mama. So what was your upbringing like?
So I was born here, born in London. Technically, yeah, it's technical. My postcode is Peckham, but my postcode is Peckham, but we're part of Lewisham Borough. So I went to school. Yeah,
You know you don't want to claim that you were brought up in Mecca.
it's technical. No, it's not that I don't want to claim it. It's just technical. Raised, brought up in London, brought up through, you know, whole UK system. Went to school in Lewisham. Went to college in Croydon.
Really?
This
Yeah,
guy's
I
all the
I went. I think it's still called John Ruskin. Yeah, John Ruskin.
You're lying.
Yeah,
John Ruskin.
John
My sister went with
Sixth
John Ruskin. I was a bit like...
Yeah, that was interesting. So yeah, it was funny because it was basically like all the people from Peckham were kind of like trying to move away, so everyone just went Croydon. So John Ruskin ended up just being a hub for all the people that came from Peckham. It didn't make any sense, but it is what it is. My upbringing. So I have an older sister and a younger brother. My older sister is 4 years older than me, and my younger brother is 2 years younger than me. But me and my brother, we were like, even now people think that we're twins, like genuinely, they don't know that I'm older than he is. Like, people
Honestly,
actually
I
think,
always thought that he was older. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, because it's the beard. I'm just gonna bring it back. So we were brought up. I pretty much did. I did a lot of things as a child. Like, when I look back at it, like, I really did a lot of things. I had, you know, my mum took us to like Greenwich Park, and we would walk from my house. It wasn't like a car journey. We would walk from my house and walk to Greenwich Park, and she'd take us. She'd take us to Greenwich Park, and we'd like be walking around Greenwich Park. Like, so we did a lot of things. I remember my first time going abroad was with my godmother. We went to Paris, so we went to Disneyland Paris. I was like 7, 7 or 8. So I would say that my upbringing was interesting in that the area that I lived in was notoriously known for crime, petty crime, notoriously known. So much so that delivery drivers, so this was back when they all had mopeds and going in there, if they found out that they had to make a delivery to my estate, they wouldn't go. They would cancel the order and they wouldn't go because they knew they were going to get robbed. This is how all the fact. This is how all the young people got like their peds and stuff, because they were taking it from these delivery men, and
Wow.
Nice.
so to speak. So my area was notoriously known for, I say petty crime. It wasn't petty crime. There was other major crimes as well. We had a whole trap house in the middle of the estate, and it was there for years. And yeah, when that got busted, it was an exciting event because I was 15,
Yeah,
16. So it was an exciting event. But when I look back at it, I'm just like, bruh, there was a whole trap house. Like whilst I was growing up in the middle of my estate, and I'm out here, you know, kicking ball with the guys and all of that stuff. So yeah, it was interesting. But then on the flip side of that, I wasn't directly involved with it. So you know the people. So you know the people that are doing it, but you don't know that that's what they're doing because the way that you interact with them is very, very different. I didn't interact with them like, say they were, you know, the olders of the estate or like the drug dealers, because essentially that's actually what they were doing. But it was just an interaction just to say that, it was very much community based. Like I knew the understanding of community because of where I grew up, even though it was in the midst of like, you know, disadvantage and crime and depravity, but I knew what community was from being around there. I could go out, like we had like an unknown, the mothers of the estate. It was like an unknown mums club, and my mum was part of it, but it was just different mums. I could just go to their houses and just be like, yeah, I'm going here, or they could say, oh yeah, they're coming to mine. It was a different type of, the community was there. It was just very unfortunate as to how the community was brought up. So yeah, that was interesting. So as much as there was that side of my upbringing, not that I was directly involved in it, then there was the other side where I would be going to like Scarborough, beaches, Leeds, like going to all these different places. Like, God bless my godmother. Like she's like second mum to me because she took me everywhere. Like her and my mum, they did everything. I played football. I did like karate. That lasted like a week, but I did it anyway. I did all these like extracurricular stuff. So I was very much, I enjoyed like my childhood. I enjoyed my upbringing. I think what was difficult for me in terms of my upbringing was when I started moving into like college. I think that was actually more difficult, and you know, the whole becoming an adult sort of thing. That was the difficult part because I didn't really know how to navigate that. So yeah, my upbringing was great. Like from what from what I remember, it was great. But it's just interesting that when I look back at it, it was in a really difficult time in terms of just crime. The level of crime that was around. It was different. Yeah, it was different. I look back at it and I think, right, this is what them guys I was calling my elder brother and you know, my big sis and big bro. This is what you guys were doing, and it's just like I was never exposed to it like that. But then growing up, I knew, okay, yeah, rah.
You know, I find it quite interesting, you know, this whole idea that this, my oldest, you know, and this is something that I remember my sister, I told you my sister, she went to John Ruskin, and I found her strange, right?
Your sister?
Yeah, so the reason why I did was, I'll touch on my upbringing a bit, but I think what made me what I found strange about her was that in our household, the way she was acting, it didn't correlate. So it's like when I used to hear stuff, or like I was like, oh, swear, like that's what you did. It's like, well, you're not the same person inside the household that does that. And I think the first thing that really I was like, whoa, is when she said, she had the tag name, right? And she was
Do you remember it?
I actually remember my tag name.
We actually need to go back and get
tag name.
Yeah.
I was too young. Maybe I was too young. I didn't have a tag name.
I had quite a few.
It was just like, you know, and this whole like community of like tag name and stuff, it connected you to like a family. And this is something that's still happening even now. Like I remember my year 7s in my form group, they'll be like, you know, to the older lot in year 11, like, no, he's my elder, he's my elder. I was just like, why? Like,
you know, it's just so. I think your point on community is. I remember when I went in year 7 and there was an older, and it gave you so much confidence, and it gave you a kind of freedom to just go wild because you had someone there who you could
support.
Just be like.
That's what it is. Yeah, you had the backing, and I think that's. I remember. Because in my essay, I was basically the only girl that played football. And then there was another girl that came, like, growing up, and then she ended up playing football. So that sort of common ground, as it were, she became my younger. So I'm like 15, 16. So, yeah, we're going to go around and say our tag names. But yeah, I'm 15, 16, and now I've got a younger. She was like 12? She would have been 12, 11, 12. And I've got a younger, and that's just how it was. I remember I actually got brought into... This is a funny story. I'm going to be real quick with this, but I have to say it. I actually got brought into, I say quite a well-known family within the Peckham community because I was about to be robbed. So I was standing at the bus stop on my way home from school, and I had just got some new Air Force Ones, high Air Force Ones. They were grey and white. They banged, and she literally came up to me. She looked at my tray. She was walking past.
You're younger.
This was how I got brought into as a younger. So before I had a younger, this is how I got brought in as a younger. And she was walking past, and then she turned back and she looked at my feet. In that moment, I knew I'm going to get robbed. I knew it instantly. I said, she's going to come and she's going to take, because back then that was a thing. They would just take trainers off of kids and just take the shoes, leave you there walking home in socks. If you ain't wearing socks with your trainers, you're walking home barefoot. Like it's not like it was an actual thing. And real. She came up to me. And in that moment, I had to make a decision. Am I going to stand up for myself, or am I walking home with no shoes? The fear of my mother and me having to walk home with no shoes overrode anything that this girl could ever do to me. So I said, right, I'm going to stand up. And she was like, oh, your trainers are nice.
They're sort of a compliment.
So it was a conversation. And she went, literally, it ended with, can I have them? And that's just what it was. So in that moment, you have to decide, are you going to give up your trainers, or are you going to stand up for yourself? I'm in year 8.
Yeah.
She was about 15, 16 at the time. Yeah, she must have been about 15, 16 at the time. And I literally said no. And the fear that was in me, because I thought she's either going to beat me up. She could do anything.
Yeah.
And she went, what? I said, no. And I said no. And she went, right, no one's ever stood up to me before. And in that moment, that's when she said, do you want to be my younger?
You're lying.
I just said yes.
Wait.
I said yes. I said,
that's interesting. Can I just ask, why do you think, because for me, like, being an older, for me, it just brings me to the dysfunction of families. So why do you think people feel that ownership that they have to be your older?
It was a rep thing. I think in that context, in the context of like sort of unfortunately that gang culture, it's a rep thing. The more youngers that you have, the higher reputation that you have, and it's almost like it's mafia like thinking. It's like if I've got loads of people under me, it means that I'm a big boss.
A pyramid
scheme. Yeah, basically. So yeah, that is how I got brought into being a younger, because I was about to get robbed.
What was your tag? All of them.
All of them. The one
Wow, she had more than one.
The one that I had for myself was Looney, because I was like the crazy one in the group. So it was like I was the one that was always out there. So yeah, Looney Tunes, and I really enjoyed like drawing Looney Tunes at the time. So I came up with
I think graffiti.
Like not graffiti. No,
Okay.
I like drawing the characters and like So I mine was Looney.
Now she's head of
And then for this girl, the thing is, so for her tag was Bashy.
My God.
Yeah. So I wasn't even younger
What,
Bashy.
Lady Bashy?
It was Little Miss Bashy. Yeah. It was nuts. Like the hierarchy of it was silly. Like you had the
Made no
main name,
sense.
then you had younger, then you had younger, then you had Little Miss, then you had like it just kept it was So
And
I
you
was
basically
Little Miss.
Graduate with age.
Something like that. Or if
This is
unfortunately one
crazy.
gets incarcerated or
A little miss.
yeah. So so I was Little Miss Bashy. That didn't last. It didn't last very long. But yeah, because then I started like playing football in like where the area where like they all were. So Damilola Taylor Centre, I was like, that was like where all the youth things were happening, and so we'd go and play football there. And yes, it was an interesting time in my life.
Well, so I mean, we have war here, we have crime here. What do we have here? Johnoi, tell us. What was your upbringing like?
I'll be brief. As brief as I can. But so like Zion, I wasn't born in the UK. I was born in Jamaica. Came to the UK when I was 7 years old. Now, prior to that, I think at that time, I had probably like four siblings. We all had separate moms, right? And so essentially in Jamaica, I was just living with my mom. My dad, he migrated to the UK, but all his kids were living with their own moms. And so when we came, the first time we actually all kind of came together was actually when we was traveling to the UK.
Wow.
And so we're all now there at the airport, going on the plane, we're saying bye to our moms and stuff. And it was only meant to be a visit, right? And Do you know where this is gonna go? So then, a summer visit my dad, so on and so came, visit the UK. And then my dad just decided not to send us back to Jamaica. And I think, obviously that growing up and stuff like that, that caused like a lot of tension, I would say, between myself and my dad and also my siblings. And, but they had this mentality. I think most people have this mentality when you're kind of coming from, a less economically developed country, is that anywhere else is better than where we are now. Yeah. And so I think as traumatic as the experience was, I would say my dad, and I would say even like to a certain extent my mom as well, can justify in the sense that, you are away from this environment of where like there's in the ghetto or where there's, people talk about narco, gun crimes, where there's like where I grew up in Jamaica was dangerous, and so coming from that background to England, it was paradise. It was like utopia, like anywhere else is better. And so I think as I've kind of grown, I've kind of understood that. So I think coming along now in terms of my upbringing, myself and my dad, we had quite a lot of tension. My household, it was an interesting one. So, coming together, siblings from different parents, right, coming together. And I think when I was around 11 or 12 or 13, one of them, my dad went to prison. That happened, my sister ran away. Then I became, because I was next in line in terms of like my age. So then I, with my stepmom, we managed the house kind of thing. So I became very independent. And so when I was growing up, like my friends, they'll be saying, no, let's go Croydon after school. Like, I was like, no, I need to go pick up my younger sister. I need to go pick up my younger brother and take them home. And I think my upbringing really molded me to kind of be this individual that is, altruistic in the sense that I truly care about other people. And then put other people more so before myself. And I generally just want to kind of like fill the gap in certain things. So, for example, if there's something missing in the team, I will put myself in that position because that's what I learned from a young age. And the good thing out of all of that is the fact that school really became a safe refuge for me. Like, I loved school. School was just anywhere else from my home and stuff like that. And so even though there were some challenges that took place in school was the place that was like, this is forming me. This is where I can be a child. This is where like there's people to look after me. Not only that, there's people there to look after me at home, but it's like, but I'm talking about your dreams, I'm talking about your ambitions, right, your aspirations, people to actually nurture that well. I found that in school, not at home.
So would you say that it's because you were amongst great teachers, or would you say you were amongst just great community, whether that's your head teacher or, the people you were hanging around with?
I mean, I'd say like, teachers loved me. Teachers really did love me. But I think I was quite fortunate to kind of have friends that weren't in that lifestyle. Like, my friends, people would consider us boffins. Do you remember that day? like
that word exists.
Like my friends are smart, they're aspirational. Like these are people who are, and so it's like I saw their life, right? I saw the fact that they had like both parents in their home, and I was like, wow, like how is that? I saw a close knit relationship between their siblings and so on and so forth. So I really attached myself to them, and they really helped me during time. So I think, I could have easily gone astray because, I was at that time I was living in Brixton, I was living in Peckham, every weekend, my stepmom was a hairdresser, so I would travel to Peckham and stay, in the shop and stuff. So it's like, they were like giving me a vision of something that wasn't necessarily correlating with my environment, and just to kind of, so I just really attached myself to them. So I say, to answer your question, it's my friends that really encouraged and, inspired me. And I think as well, there are certain school teachers as well, that would be like, sorry, funny story, but I'm clearing through my room right now and I saw some of my old books from year 8 and year 9 and year 10, and I was looking through it, and then I remember my Spanish teacher saying, Johnoi, like, you know, excelente, you know, and I was just like, you know, this is like the praise I got growing up outside of my home, and because my parents, I'm a good child, you know, but I had to be good. My brother was bad, you know, that position already taken. So it's like, you know, for me to be praised without me, you know, either doing what I should be doing and stuff like that, it was really refreshing. So I had great community at school. Yeah,
I think it's amazing how, and interesting actually, how your upbringing has actually molded your personality, and how it's turned out for the good and not for the bad, if that makes sense. I think, because I think for me, no offense, but anytime I hear Jamaica, I used to get scared all the time because I just associate Jamaica with, is it the blood in the cribs? Blood in the cribs? Blood in the
Crips.
Crips.
Was it Crips?
Crips.
In the USA.
I just associated Jamaica with like Kingston, and you know, I had a negative perception. Of course, now, you know, as I've matured, etc. So it's interesting how you were almost brought out from, I guess you spoke about gun crime, and you're brought into this paradise, and it's almost changed you as a person for the good of those around you. And so you sort of touched upon like your school and how your school has almost molded you to be who you are today. So you had a positive perception on school. So I'm just going to throw the ball to you, Zion. What was your, you know, what does school do for you? Because like the children that I teach, I know some of them hate school. Some of them can't wait to get out, and you know.
But they were in primary school.
I know, but they will still remember this.
Mad.
And but do you know what? It's actually the family that's affecting the children.
Okay.
Because of course, like confidentiality wise, I won't explain the impact in some of my children, but what I see is the fatherlessness has this massive impact, especially on boys, and how they perceive school. Some of them just dislike, to actually get them to write a sentence, it's drawing blood out of a stone. So, you know, I think the family unit is so important, and we need good families, we need good fathers and good mothers to, you know, build up individuals who are able to make an impact in today's society. So, Zion, what would you say your school experience was like? How did it impact you for today?
Yeah, I think similar to Johnoi, I think I was one of those students who was smart but never tried. So I actually remember doing my mock GCSEs. I think even before then, I can literally recall every teacher I had. I can recall them. I loved school. Yeah, I was more the popular people. You know, I would play sports. I was the joker in the class. But I would still be able to do what I needed to do. Yeah. I remember GCSE mocks. I did not revise and got all A's and A stars.
My gosh.
You know, and it was
good for some. Good for some.
But I think that was my downfall, where I rested a lot on natural ability and didn't try. And I think that was one thing I've had to really battle with and kind of come out of, because when I did my actual GCSEs, I thought, did revise, came out with mostly B's for my real GCSEs, and it was like the disappointment because I knew the potential I had, I knew what I could do. Yeah. But resting on my laurels meant that I never actualized at that particular stage what I was able to do, and that was, I think, something that I began to see, where I know I can do this, but what's the point in trying, kind of thing, or I'll just do it haphazardly, or last minute, based off my own ability, rather than actually maybe having that time to think, time to plan, time to really engage in whatever it is and make sure I maximize. So I was one of those kind of students, played a lot of sports, athletics. The teachers loved me as well. But I think what school really did for me was, I think there was a real thirst for education and learning. Growing up here, like, again, similar to I think more similar to you, my kind of childhood was kind of in the mix. I actually, again, just being more vulnerable to talks, I actually knew how to be different people. Wow. Like who I was in the home, again, similar to Johnoi, I had to be responsible from the age of 6 over my kind of siblings and supporting my mother. I was working from the age of 16 kind of thing. So I knew how to be the responsible older brother, like good boy at home. Outside,
madness.
Boy.
Madness.
So then would you say that was your choice?
I think yes. I think part of it was choice and part was environment. I think I had to step into a position which I was never ready for. And of course, that had adverse effects on me and my ability to be a child. So now when I saw an opportunity to do what other kids were doing, I took it wholeheartedly. I ran towards it.
Whole chest.
I ran towards it. You know what I mean?
Ran to
That's true.
No, I get it.
You know, so yeah, I think that was what, you know, I think really that was a theme. I think for me, I'm kind of growing up, but I think I lost that whole laughing bit. What was your question again?
My question was how did your upbringing?
There was a thirst for education. I remember growing up, I would read encyclopedias after encyclopedias. I had every horrible history book at home. I would read. I had encyclopedias. I read back to front. I could tell you what it said on this page. I could tell you what the facts were. I love space. I love science. I love technology. I loved animals, wildlife. I loved everything. I love to read. I love to draw. As you know, drawing at a young age. Literally, for me, it was the world. I can do anything and everything. And I think that's what school really instilled in me. Though I didn't always actualize my potential in school, I saw through sports, through reading, through academia, I could literally apply myself anywhere and do it. So I think my issue is now, how do I do things well? So I think what that has maybe translated for me is now in a more kind of mature stage, I think I don't try to cap myself. So whether it's this different initiative or this idea or going into this kind of arena, I think I try to always give myself the opportunity to have a go. And I think that's what school did. I think for me, even going forward, I think when we spoke about kind of ambitions a bit last week, you spoke about philanthropy. I think for me, when people used to ask me, I said, like people would know, I said I want to be an Iron Man. The reason why, because Iron Man in Avengers is my favorite, by the way. He's a billionaire. He's a philanthropist. He's intellectual. He does everything, and I want to be that. I want to have businesses. You know, I want to, you know, as you said, I want to solve world issues. I want to do philanthropy. I want to help, you know, the homeless. I want to help the young people. I want to be a doctor in academia. I want to be in government. I think I can do it all.
And just to butt in there, would you say that reason and that mindset is because of how much your mum or your parents, the people that you grew up with, or I could use the word suffered as such, or you know how hard they worked to give you a life? Would you say that is why you have that mindset?
Do you know what I think? It's mad. I was speaking to my mum about this yesterday. I said to her that, you know, when I came to uni the first time and I proper joined the church, and people asked me, oh, how did you, you know, come to the faith? One of the first things I said was, whenever I was at home, I would be in my room sleeping, and all I would hear day upon day upon day is my mum, top of her voice, praying.
Wow.
And I would hear her praying for me, this future, this. So although I was, you know, going out, doing whatever, and coming home and hearing it, it was feeding me. And it was that kind of indirect positive reinforcement. So I was just, all the time she'll come and pray and say, you're going to do this, you're going to be this, you're going to be this. And I think it was just really interesting because, you know, when my father left, there was a specific phrase he said to us, essentially paraphrasing, that we're not going to amount to anything. We're going to be on the streets. We're going to blah, 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 blah. So he put that mental cap there. And I think through my mum's words, etc., there was such a level of freedom to really break out of that. So I think she was a nurse. She had to give up her job as a nurse to raise us as a single parent. So seeing, you know, what she went through, seeing her prayers, seeing her crying, I think that definitely gave me a perspective of, actually, if something happens to my mum, I'm next in line. So I need to make sure I'm good for all of us as well. So that definitely.
I think it's, do you know what, I just think it's so beautiful. And I think as I've grown up, I've begun to appreciate my parents a lot more. I've begun to realize that they've worked so hard for me to, and the fact that they've worked so hard, I have no excuse not to work even harder. And I you know, just teaching children, I find that a lot of them it's almost like they underestimate how hard their parents are actually working. But I mean, can you blame them because they're so young? And so just going on to you, Mamus, would you say that how you saw your parents, you know, strive in the household, does that impact, you know, the way you teach today?
For me, most definitely. So my mum came here when she was 14. couldn't speak a word of English, and went through the UK secondary system, secondary education. Back then, GCSEs were called O levels. Like we're talking, and
What is O levels mean again?
I have.
Was it ordinary?
I can't remember. It's not ordinary.
No. Do you know what? I was watching a podcast the other day, and I think they were discussing it, and I heard someone say it's ordinary.
I can't remember what it was called, but it was So it was O levels was so you had O levels and A levels. O levels was the equivalent of GCSEs. No, O levels was basically GCSEs. Yeah, and so she came, went through the system, and it was a thing where just growing up. So when my dad is a teacher, lecturer, and so when we were really young, my dad actually moved to South Africa, and he was there for about 7 or 8 years. So we literally only saw him once a year when he could come down and visit. So we only saw him once a year, and I think that did have a major impact on us, because essentially for those 7-8 years, my mum was a single parent. It was a single parent household, and I was just the way that my mum was. My mum never, we've all been there, especially in Afro-Caribbean households. 100% is still never good enough. Like it was one of those things. But I think the reason now I understand why that was, because my mum had understood that her coming here, there was no room for her to be less than excellent, because already she had immigrant strike against her, couldn't speak English against her. My mum still managed to get her O level, still managed to get her NVQs and all of that stuff. And so my mum now is a head caterer in a secondary school. Wow. And, it just showed me that my mum has never done anything less than 100%. And I think as I got older, it made me think the same. And
it's powerful.
It was...
Wait, sorry, because I actually just wrote that down. Like, that was so powerful. Can you just say it again?
So, I can't remember what I said.
There's no room for me to be less than excellent.
There's no room for me to be less than excellent and less than 100%, because my mum has done it. Yeah. My mum, my mum couldn't speak English. Like, my mum was bullied in school because she couldn't speak English properly. But luckily, she had, and, even going back to when you asked, was it teachers and stuff in your school that helped you get to where you are? For my mum, there was that one teacher that spoke Yoruba. If he was not there, my mum wouldn't have been able to get through school. Yeah. And then I think about even myself in school. I had this one teacher, and it sounds really strange, but I have an older sister, and we all know about sibling rivalry. And my sister could do no wrong. My sister GCSEs A levels degree masters everything and so there was that comparison. Even when I was in school, teachers were expecting me to be exactly like my sister. They couldn't pick out my individuality. They were expecting that. I remember it was just one English teacher. I remember her up to this day, and I even think she still teaches in the school, Miss Kelly. And she said to me, she looked at me and she went, it was to do with English work. I was lazy, similar thing with you, Zion. I could do it. I'm just not going to. You're not going to tell me to do it. I will do it when I feel like doing it. That's just how it's going to be. And I remember this one teacher, it was to do with English work. And she just looked at me and she just went, "Oh, you're nothing like your sister, are you?" Wow. And that freed me, because for the longest time, I was trying to live up to everything that my sister had done in that school. I was trying to get them A's and get that. And it was frustrating, because the way that I did it was not the way that she did it. So it was really frustrating to have to try and live up to that expectation, as it were. So it was that one teacher that said that one line, and it freed me. Like, there was a level of freedom that I now had, because it was like, okay, at least one teacher in the school understands that I'm not like my sister. But anyway, going back to my parents. So my dad, we spoke about it in a previous podcast. He went on, he knew what his children could do. He was thinking, I'm a teacher. I know that my children are not daft. They don't sit in the corner with dunce cap on their head. My children are not daft. So even that, another thing, my dad didn't expect anything less than your best. And I think even that in itself, it wasn't necessarily striving for 100%. My parents' thing was, whatever it is that you are doing, just make sure that you're the best at it. I couldn't care less. I think that ran through, I think especially as we got older and in secondary school, because Nigerian parents, you must be lawyer, accountant, doctor, all these professions. But I think it got to a point, especially for me, because we'll get into that anyway. Like I said, I pretty much almost failed at every phase of education in my life. But we'll talk about that another time. But I think for me growing up, it was a thing where they just looked at it and they realized, okay, she doesn't do what her sister does. She doesn't do what her brother does. She doesn't do what, other people are doing. I just want you to be your best. I couldn't care less what it is that you're doing. Just make sure that you are giving it your all. It has to be 100% or nothing. Otherwise, why are you here? like why are you doing it? And I think that just ran through sort of how I was brought up. It ran through how I do things now. And it's even, I find myself saying the same things to my students. I say, listen, this is the grade you told me you want. I will do everything that I can to get you there. But if you don't give me your all, then we're here for nothing. And I think it's something that I strive to just exemplify in all that I do, even as in teaching, just in life in general. If I'm going to go and do something, I'm going to make sure that it's excellent. I'm going to make sure that I have poured myself out into this entire thing to ensure that it's its absolute best. I am very aware that people are better than me. All that says to me is that I can be where they are. It does. I don't use it as a limit. It's not a limitation for me. It just means if you got there, then I too can get there. There's a possibility of this happening. And I think, growing up, and one thing that I would say, especially being the middle child, I think sometimes when you're in the middle, you kind of get left to your own devices. So you don't really, like, the oldest has to look after the youngest. The youngest is just free reign. And just, does what they do. And I think being in the middle, you kind of get left to your own devices. And I think that in itself sort of allowed me to have the independence. But also I knew that I had an older sister that I could look up to, but I also knew I had a responsibility for a younger sibling as well. So there was that merging of the two. But I would say that's one thing that my parents, because of their upbringing and how they were, my parents have instilled in me that it's nothing less than your best. Otherwise...
Wow, what a conversation! I really enjoyed that. I think the main thing I took away from this is the fact that each and every one of us here are parents, and just the little seeds that they've planted in our lives has actually had an impact on what we are today, how we teach, how we treat people, especially like coming from your side of the story, Johnoi, etc. And I think what I wrote down just to leave you guys with, those who are listening out there, is we may not have a choice over our upbringing, but we have a choice on our now. And stealing from Mamus's parents, ensure you're the best at everything you do. So that is us today. Those are my 2 pence. Thank you for joining us on today's episode. Remember, the conversation does not stop here. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram and YouTube at Limits Podcast. And don't forget to hashtag limit and hashtag edxsoc. Until next time.
Until next time.
Until next time.
Until next time.